belong to a family of teachers, and father is teacher, everybody else is a teacher, taught for 30 years or more. And I have found that when I look at the world and the experiences I have, both inside India and outside, I have an abiding interest in comparative literature, comparative mythology, and the contemporary world. What I have realized is that as we live our lives out, there are three chapters to civilization. And in a sense, they kind of shift from one to the other in a paradigmatic way, which means everything fundamentally valuable and significant in the previous one is rendered null in this one. Having been brought up in India, mostly Calcutta, etc., I had internalized a certain worldview. When I went to the United States at Thunderbird, Phoenix, Arizona, studied at, which is now part of Arizona State University, every single assumption of mine got challenged. I thought the metaphor of the city called Phoenix was operating in my own life. Phoenix is that mythical bird that is born from its own ashes. In real terms, it's not born from its own ashes. It lays an egg. The amount of heat required to hatch that egg can come from self-combustion. That's what the phoenix bird does, to be born anew. And I think something of that order is what I experienced there. It was transformation by trauma. When I came back to India, I came back to teach at the Indian School of Business with two different worldviews apparently in collision. I said 3 chapters. The story of civilization has 3 chapters. Chapter 1, 20,000 years ago, women staying back in the caves accidentally discovered agriculture. It takes 12,000 years for agriculture to become systematic enough. So nomadic movement is no longer required. 8,000 years we've had an agrarian wave, an agrarian society. About 300 years ago, a person sitting back in the kitchen, mindlessly watching a kettle boil, puts a spoon on the spout of the kettle, the spoon gets pushed. Metaphorically, this is the second wave, or chapter 2, the industrial. 2 brothers are trying to fly a contraption through the air. The first flight lasts for about 12 seconds. But they had created the 3rd chapter of civilization. This was the technological chapter. Right under our noses today, what is emerging is the digital chapter. Hardly 15 years old. Technology was 110 years old. Industrial was 300 years old. 8,000 years old. And paradigms have shifted. We are now in the digital world. It is unimaginable. Also called the exponential. If you really think about what exponential is, it is astonishing that it is beyond human imagination. If I were to take 30 steps on a linear scale, and each step is 1 meter, on a linear scale, I would have covered 30 meters. On an exponential curve, the same 30 steps would take me around planet Earth 26 times. It's like the Vamana avatar, who goes to the king begging for something. The king says, what do you want? And he says, some land. He says, how much land? He says, 3 steps. Really? With the first step, all of the earth. With the second step, all of the sky. And with the third step, that which is greater than the earth and the sky, the king's head, ego. If I think about this, the kind of leadership required in a digital era, I believe in my own thinking and understanding that India still belongs to the agrarian ethos. Its orientation, its thinking, its values, its imperatives are agrarian in its orientation. You have a psychological orientation that is agrarian. You have a chronological context that is digital. There's a psychology-chronology dichotomy, almost a schizophrenic dichotomy. So the kind of leader that will be successful in the digital environment, first of all, the leader has to be a modernist. Modernist is an interesting idea. It presumes a scientific temperament. The Western world has had the scientific temperament for about 350 years now. A scientific temperament looks at predictability and verifiability. But the third, more powerful one is falsifiability, that there is no truth except the extent to which it cannot be proved false. So rectilinear propagation of light gives way to wave theory, gives way to Packett's photon, gives way to string, gives way to dual nature. And each time you rejected the previous one because it inadequately explained reality. So a modern mind is not a contemporary mind. The rat in the kitchen is contemporary. A modern mind is the ability of the mind to challenge its operating assumptions, finding it inadequate, reject it in favor of better set of assumptions, which too is falsifiable. Socrates was modern. Siddhartha Gautama was modern 2,500 years ago. So the leader as a modernist, the leader as futurist, someone who can see into the seeds of time. Look at all these combinatorial technologies. Look at them in conversion and say, what are the probability of occurrence of scenarios? Am I ready for that scenario? Can I participate in shift that scenario and shape it? This is the futurist job, to jump, visualize, come back, and prepare for that incredible future. Because those that are not ready for it are not going to really survive. The mortality rate of innovation is going to be incredibly high. So leader as modernist, futurist, as a techno-utopist, someone who's a technologist, but leverages technology for the purpose of the service of mankind, anchored in the Indian ethos of loka samastha, sukhino bhavantu. So techno-utopist. Then an innovator. He must continuously look at what else needs to be done, what can be improved, what paradigms can be shifted, what can be transformed completely. So as innovator, then as humanist. Leader as humanist and spiritualist. Has to be anchored in spiritualism, has to be anchored in humanism. If you think about the worldviews that we are evolving, the present day of worldview with its dark sides, technology is technology. The terrorists can leverage it as much as common people can. So technology is technology. So STEM has given rise to technology, which is a double-edged sword, can cut both ways. But there is the idea of what is called the HECEII, H-E-C-E-I-I, humanities, ethics, emotional intelligence, compassion, imagination, and intuition, something that is intrinsic to the human being. So if you look at what comprises the agrarian ethos and the digital, there is a collision between these two. Our default orientation is agrarian. In agriculture, you have land, you plow the land, it's hard work, the sun is brutal and uncompromising. You may not be using a John Deere tractor, your plot of land is not big enough. You might have to manually do it. After having dug, after having removed previous weeds, etc., you sow the seeds. After having sown the seeds, you must do what? You must wait for the monsoons, for the rains. If there is too much rain, it doesn't work. If there's too little rain, it doesn't work. Over hundreds of generations, you internalize the belief that no matter what I do, the outcome is predicated on something or someone else. Fatalism is one of the more brutal consequences of an agrarian society, at least in India, that is predicated on the monsoons. Fate means an internal, quiet sense of helplessness. No matter what I do, the outcome has too many variables at play and display that I cannot really guarantee success. In the underbelly of fatalism will always be insecurity. Always be insecurity. Fate means taqdeer, kismat. There is something larger at play. There's a divinity that shapes our ends. Rough hew them how we will, Shakespeare. But we've internalized that. Insecurity. If I get into IIT, many of my friends who were better than me, much better than me, didn't. I did. I was a mediocre guy. I struggled all the years, and finally I got placed. I got placed in a really good company because in the interview I demonstrated ambiguity. I was not sure, I'm not certain, depends, all kinds of caveats. And they found this as indicators of openness, willing to explore, alternate different perspectives, and said, this is the guy we want. And there I was. I knew in my private heart that I'm not that great, but all the external indicators seem to indicate that I am. There's a dichotomy between what I felt and what the reality outside was. Meaning when it finally came push to shove, people would know I'm not that great. A series of circumstantial situations have made me what I am. A quiet sense of helplessness. Fatalism. Therefore, in the underbelly of fate is insecurity. That if luck has brought me here, luck can take it away. Agriculture, agrarian means the land will never produce enough for everybody. Never. There will be scarcity. That's basic Malthusian theorem. So in scarcity, There's pervasive scarcity. Not enough food, not enough water, not enough milk, not enough B school, not enough colleges, not enough teachers, not enough eye surgeons, not enough, not enough, not enough. So when there's pervasive not enough, one of the defense mechanisms that comes out is people who have less resources share resources. Look at the people who travel in a bus. Look at the people who travel by train. They share their seat with others. Far many numbers of those will be traveling. Look at a road. Narrow road will have road traffic going and coming in all modes of traffic. And people adjust, accommodate, honk, push, and they manage. They are sharing a resource. But if resources have to be shared, then relationships have to be built. Therefore, our default orientation is relatedness, relationship. Not to get into conflict, to avoid conflict. Not to get into conflict. Do not assert unnecessarily. Do not fight for your right. Try and adjust. Try and accommodate. Try and manage. So you conflict avoid. You do not assert. You build rapport and relationships. Why do I need to build relationships with everybody? Because I don't know when I may need whom. Resources are scarce. If relationships are built, then some of the resources scarce might come my way. This whole orientation is very interesting. You will avoid conflict, you will build relationship. Finally, you will realize that relationships have value, so you will empathize, you will accommodate. So the Indian ethos largely is, in the research has shown, empathic, fatalistic, but optimistic. The belief that fate is there, but fate will finally shape it out in the way that will serve all of us. So it's optimistic. The third thing I want to talk about is time. Time, you have very limited time. The Western world has limited time. We have lots of time. Look at the Chaturyugas. 71 Chaturyugas will make a Manu, 100 Manus, whatever, they have a calculation. 311 trillion years you have. What are you going to do with it? Your soul is not going to die. Gita has been guaranteed. So you'll be born again and again and again. And the purpose of life is to get out of the cycle of birth and death. If the purpose of life is to get out of the cycle of birth and death, and you are born to die, born to die, born to die, then the middle is not important. History is not important. Therefore, we did not write history, we focused on mythic narratives. Narratives that have a deeper resonance, that represent behind themselves a truth. So the Ramayana, the Mahabharata will have deeper resonance than the history of which king came, cut off whose head, and died of malaria. So you come and you go. Now, if you look at this, the middle is not important, mythic narratives are important. If the middle is not important, then achievement is not important. The purpose of life is to break out of the cycle of birth and death. If I look at some of the components of the Indian ethos and contrast it with the digital world, you have fatalism. No matter what I do, there's an operating mega logic versus initiative. Initiative means that the outcome is a consequence of the actions I have taken. Fatalism is no matter what actions I take, it doesn't matter. There is an operating meta context to it. So initiative, fate has initiative. Scarcity has abundance. A 30 trillion economy for 320 million people vis-a-vis 4.27 trillion for 1,400 million people. So there's abundance. People-oriented, build relationship, task-oriented. The purpose of relationship is to get the job done faster and better. If you have cyclical time, linear time. Everything must be achieved on this side of death. On that side of death, there is nothing. Therefore, go out there, conquer, achieve, do, colonize. Carpe diem, seize the day, dent the universe, like Steve Jobs said. Do not leave the universe the way it has been. Because you need to be remembered. Immortality means being alive in the minds of men and women. For us, immortality means getting the hell out of this cycle of birth and death. We are in an exponential economy. What does it mean for us? I think the whole theme dovetails back into what I have just said, that is shape the new normal. There's a psychology-chronology dichotomy, almost schizophrenically. You are half-hearted, you have a default orientation. By design, there is an optimality that exists to build the capabilities. To become more expansive and inclusive is the way forward. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.